Hit it. This is a conversation with Aditya Chandrasekhar. He's a co-founder and producer of Beyond Borders, a music project where artists all over the world collaborate and produce music by exchanging ideas over the internet. In addition, he has an extensive background in technology, computer science, and data analysis. In this conversation, we discuss music, the impact of a performer in music, technology and AI, and also Carnatic music.
This is showtime. If you like what you see, oh, no time. This is no time. If you like what you see, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and give us 5 stars on Apple Music. If you really like what you see, donate to us on Patreon. And now, it's no time. Good job.
Friedrich Nietzsche once said that those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. So I want to start off by defining what is music. Do you think any sound, any note, any melody can be music, or there needs to be some structure to it?
I mean, you could say there is music in any sound that's there, but at the end of the day, music is defined by what we call music, right? And the quote that you said, people who are dancing, right? So let's start from there. So if you take any song or any tune, it has 2 aspects to it, right? And if you have to define these 2 aspects based on what we as people do when we listen to music, right? What do you do when you listen to a song? You either move to it, or rather you move to it and you sing along to it, right? So these are the basic 2 components that would be there in anything you call music, which is the beat, or what the Jamaican producers used to call rhythm.
Sorry?
Rhythm. R-I-D-D-I-M. So they used to call it rhythm. And the other aspect is the melody, right? What you sing along to. And the beat and the melody, if you can sing along to it and dance to it, that is usually what you would call as music, right? Now, how do you define that this is a beat and something else is not a beat? Like a car engine or a bike sound, you could call it as a beat, right? So the consistency of the beat is what you define as the beat. So like in a song, you would have a tempo, right? You would have a time signature, right? Something which your body can move along to. And for some strange reason, we love even numbers, right? That's what you would refer to as a 4x4 song. If you have ever heard of that connotation, basically a 4x4 song is each cycle follows 4 notes. So like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like a basic. And like I think 80% of the songs have this as the basic key signature, right? Time signature. And there are obviously more complicated time signatures, but that again becomes it goes into the progressive music or all of those things which fewer people listen to, right? So I think there's a Pareto here also wherein like 80% of the songs would just stick to that one time signature. And that's what you would hear played in clubs and all of that. And the other aspect is what you sing along to, which is the melody on top of this. Again, that comes in the form of a hook. It comes in the form of a tune, right? So these are the basic aspects that you would have to call something a song or to call something music.
This is what's usually done, but do you think it's necessary to construe that as music? So you brought up cars. So let's say the sound of a washing machine has a repetitive nature to it. Cars honking in traffic, fingernails scraping a blackboard. Can any of this be perceived as music if we just broaden the scope a bit?
Definitely. So, I mean, I do this, and I think a lot of other drummers would also, right? Whenever I hear like a sound which is repetitive, be it a clock ticking or something of that sort, we start beating on top of it, right? We start creating a beat on top of it. So there is music all around us. There's music with everything, right? And there have been instances where people have recorded everyday sounds and stitched that together to make music. But at the end of the day, you are making something for a listener, right? That's that you're communicating something to a listener through your music. And if the listener can perceive a beat and something they can sing along to with that, that's when they can hear it as music, right? Otherwise, they would just mix it as any other noise that they hear. So even when people record natural sounds and make it into songs, you would notice that there is a beat to it, which is a constant pulse or a constant rhythm, and it sticks to some key signature or another.
You mentioned music needs to be made for a listener. Do you think that's necessary? Would you make music if no one was listening to it?
I would make music because I mean that's what I do, right? Like it gives me some sort of relief. It gives some sort of a. It's almost like playing a sport, right? But definitely, I would make it with the listener in mind.
Do you think that's important?
It's very important, yeah.
So the listener goes hand in hand with music. You cannot have music without a listener.
No, it's the same as would you write a book without thinking about the reader? Like you're trying to communicate something, right? So to me, music is a language wherein you are trying to tell something to the person who's listening to your music. And that's actually very ironic because I've never, I don't listen to lyrics in music. So if I'm saying I'm trying to communicate through music and I'm going to make only instrumental music, it sounds very odd to a lot of people. But even in that case, right, when I'm trying to communicate something to the listener, I'm obviously thinking about how they would perceive it.
Fascinating. Inside jokes, guys. Okay, so you've touched upon something very interesting. Let's explore that further into a segment I like to call man versus machine in music.
Okay.
And I want to start off by discussing the role of man in music itself. So Napoleon had said that music is what shows us that the human race is greater than we realize. And like you've mentioned right now, that music is always spoken in conjunction with man. It is something that we have created, put a certain kind of melody to it, some repetition to it, and also thinking of man as the ends for that music as well. So first question for you is, how important is the role of the human or the performer in music? Do you think we can do without it? And why I ask is, another way of phrasing the question is, when you think of music, do you think of the performers? So are you into drumming because of guys like Gavin Harrison, Troy Wright, Adam Tuminaro, Jairo Kavi?
Nice. I like your homework. I like that you've done your homework on this.
Thank you. My mother does my research for me, actually. So are you into music because of these people and you admire what they're creating? And of course, they're creating something beautiful, but that human origin is a key point. Or are you into music because of the idea of it, the concept of it?
So see, as a musician, I value the performance aspect of it. But see, if you look at it, there are two aspects to this. I'm splitting everything into two today. But yeah, there are two aspects to music.
Can
right?
I just say there are two types of people in the world?
Yeah.
Those who split everything into two things. Please continue.
And so the two things would be, one is music as a performed art, right? Wherein you are giving importance to the performer in this case. What you are trying to look for in your experience is watching the performer do those things that you think are humanly not possible, right? A Slash guitar solo, you're just like, oh my god, how is he doing that, right? The other aspect is the creative product, right? Or music as a produced piece, which is what today's pop music would be, or even rap music probably, right? Wherein it is produced a certain way so that the listener, when they listen to it, they feel XYZ emotions, and it is made for a certain setting, right? So I'll just talk about the performed piece first, and then we'll talk about the produced piece because I love the produced side of it. So performed music is what we've been seeing for ages together, right? It started off, I think, probably back in the orchestra symphony side of things, wherein you had tons of performers. You had like almost hundreds of performers with a conductor, and they had to be, like in sync, and what they perform is what you hear, right? Then came your jazz music, rock music. All of this had to do with the performer, right? You would go to a live concert to watch the Beatles perform. You would go to see how Slash plays the guitar, right? And that exists to this day, wherein people who are learning to play the instruments, like when I learned to play the drums, I looked at the performance side of music, right? After that, as I grew as a drummer, the artists that I would listen to were probably rock artists, metal artists, because they play very good music. They're very good performers in the sense that they are very, very good at the craft of playing that instrument, right? So that comes under the ambit of performed music. Now, if you have to talk about produced music, wherein the performer is not the only thing that you are listening to as a consumer, right? Let's take the example of a Rihanna song, right? A Rihanna song has at least probably 30 people behind it who are doing various aspects of that song. And it goes right from the person who makes the beat and the melody, right? To the person who writes the song. They write the hook for the song, right? So, and these are all different people. So what would happen is, let's say a producer makes a beat, right? They would then call this person who writes the hooks. There is a name for that person. I'm really forgetting it
Hook
right
writer.
now. No, it's not a hook writer.
Oh, no? Oh,
It's not a hook writer. They would call that person in, and that person would sing along to the beat, right? They would think, oh, okay, I can write these lyrics together and all of that, while keeping in mind what Rihanna is to the audience, right? If you are writing a song for Rihanna, you are going to write keeping in mind what image she has built in the audience's mind, right? And then that comes into the picture, and then the song is produced, right? So that's what produced music is. So in the case of produced music, maybe a lot of those 25-30 people can be moved out of the equation if a computer can write the beats and make the lyrics for me and write the hook, right? Because as a company that's producing the song and selling it out there, I would obviously make it more cost effective if I had a computer or a machine writing this for me. But even then, at the end of the day, you as a listener are going to a Rihanna concert more for Rihanna than for the song, right? And the reason I say this is because that Rihanna song, if you had listened to it the first time without the name Rihanna or the label to it, you probably would not have given it a second listen. Right now, because it's a Rihanna song, you give it a second listen. The radio station plays it 2-3 times. And that's the reason you as a consumer know this song and love this song. Right? And you start loving the performer or the person. Right? So there again, the person cannot be replaced. And in the first instance, when we spoke about perform music, obviously that's the person, right?
So that proves that then people who actually like music are not in love with the idea, the concept of music, but the concept of music as produced by a human. So it's the same analogy in sport as well. When we watch someone do a long jump, we admire them because it's a human being that's doing something that average people can't do, or someone on the field is doing something that normal people can't do. They put that effort in and they've shown some natural talent to be able to achieve that. And then what that basically proves, if you see, let's say, a leopard or cheetah do a long jump, you're not that impressed. But if you see a human being to cover that same amount of distance, it's something impressive. The same goes for music.
I think something natural has, I mean, this is just a hypothesis, right? I think something which has nature involved is what amuses us. The same reason you would watch WWE rather than watch Bot Wars. Bot Wars is very interesting, right? But a lot more people watch WWE because you can imagine, oh my God, imagine if I got hit like that. Oh my God, imagine if I could punch like that, right? But if it's a machine, you're just like, okay, probably even I could build it.
Let's say if I love music, then it's not really the idea, or it's not really music that I love, but it's a human being performing the music, So I'm more in love with the idea of human achievement, human potential, human limit, but not really music, because otherwise I would be listening to the bird songs, the song of whales, dolphins, because that's all music, and apparently they also have.
Definitely. So that's what, when we actually, I didn't touch upon this when I was talking about produced music, right? Produced music, again, there is a whole array of music which is functional in nature today, right? With Spotify coming into the picture, there are playlists for workouts, there are playlists for yoga, there are playlists for work and
relaxation, studying.
Right? Yeah. So that's functional music. Now you don't really care if a computer produced that or if a human did. So in that case, you are listening to music just for the music, but you probably wouldn't pay a lot of money to go and watch a live performance of that music because you don't really know who that person is. What are you going to watch? Unless they can, unless you're talking about a brilliant laser show wherein the music is being played. But that's again a very different.
Can you not pay for the experience of it? Like, in a way, you're paying Spotify for the entire experience, right?
I'm paying Spotify for the access to the music, right? But in a Rihanna concert, for example, when Justin Bieber came to India, the tickets sold for 25,000.
Damn.
Right? So that's actually a cheap ticket.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But you would not pay 25,000 just to listen to the music.
Would you?
I wouldn't. I get it for a cheaper amount. I mean, if you're talking about amazing sound quality and the best speakers in the world, I still wouldn't. Because even if you're able to reproduce those frequencies, which a normal set of earphones can't, right? How many of us actually know or make feel the difference of those frequencies?
Yeah, I mean, so then basically the argument would be that, let's say when I go to a concert, I'm going partly for the performer and also going partly for all the other people who are fans of the performer, and together we create this giant entity that is in love with the music, singing along, is making waves, and is that aura along with the performer on stage. So let's say if I remove that stage performer, it's just 1,000 people who are all singing the song that I like and all chanting along. Is that something that's appealing to you? Would you ever pay for that?
Definitely I would.
You would.
So that's, that's what a club is.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
But only for like
No, there
music.
that's the thing, right? Like we don't have genre based clubs here. Like in the US, jazz pubs are a thing, rock clubs. I think India also has a lot of rock clubs. So genre specific um, institutions like this, that's what they do. They bring people who like a certain genre, a certain type of music together, so you can enjoy together and form that entity.
So you were talking about music always spoken of in conjunction with humans and the performer. Don't you think that puts a very lazy cap or threshold on what music can achieve? Because it seems like there's so much potential, if the word, or there's an entire spectrum of music that can exist, but because we are restricting ourselves to only what human beings can achieve, we're actually missing out on a lot of music.
I mean, I wouldn't agree to say that we are restricting ourselves, right? You as a listener, you're never going to say that I don't want this music because it's not a human. You're just not as amused by it. It's just how we are, right? That's what I'm saying. So when it's a functional piece of art, wherein you're looking for it for your workouts, for yoga, there you don't really mind. I don't think people would care if it was produced by a computer, right? If it's able to, if I can find a constant stream of songs produced at the tempo that I do my daily morning run and give me the variety and give me the energy to go through it, I wouldn't mind if it's by a human or by a computer, right? If it's able to give me the same energy and the motivation. But because we crave for something more than that, we crave to watch a human performer. That's the reason we do it. Nobody's limiting ourselves to say that, we have to only do this because it's a human. But that said, we are actually, we are leveraging technology in a lot more ways than we did earlier, right? So technology has really changed the way we make music. So earlier, back in the 60s and 70s, when you had a band that had to record, they would have physical tapes that they would cut and paste together and all of that, right? Today, it's all on a computer. Like I can just copy paste the different tracks and do it. So that's just a very small example. Like I make music with people from different countries today, right? And that would not have been possible without technology. So I think we are leveraging technology, but I don't think we are at a point where we would want computers to take over completely. And I don't think that point would come either because of the way we consume music and the aspects of music that we love.
So we've been flirting with one important question in all these topics. So let me just ask you straight out. What do you think is the purpose of music? And let's go one step back. Do you think music should have a purpose?
There is no purpose for music, right? It's up to each listener what they want the music to do. So each of us defines the purpose for the music we listen to. So if I want the music to help me through tough times, I'm going to find music for that. If I want music to give me company when I'm making love, I'm going to do that. So it's just the reason that you're going to pick the music for. I mean, that's the purpose, right? If you're talking about it, I think music as an entity itself serves multiple purposes. It's like asking, do humans have a purpose?
Do they?
Each human has their own purpose, right? Like that's what we try and figure out and break our heads over. I think music does the same thing.
So there is no purpose to music.
And there is.
And there is.
Yeah.
Beautiful way of putting it, Mr. Adi Chan.
Fascinating.
Okay, fascinating, as we say. Don't make a compilation out of this, okay? I don't want to see any memes. Anyway, so we've spoken about the role of man, the role of humans in music. Let's turn to the machine aspect of it and the digital aspect. Why are you looking? Oh, yeah. It's all around us, man. It's controlling us. Okay. So lately, the term technological singularity has become very famous due to the growth of AI systems. And the technological singularity is this point when AI systems will become more intelligent than human beings. It'll cause this intelligence explosion because they'll enter a cycle of self-improvement. And it's a point of singularity because life as we know it will completely break down because all our companies, systems, all the machines we know will be controlled by something far more intelligent than us, can do things faster and more efficiently. I feel there's an analogy here in music as well. I currently get this feeling that we're on a cusp of a musical singularity of sorts. Due to the advancements we've seen in digital production, the introduction of synthesizers, sampling, virtual environments, you have the rise of EDM and DJs now, and also distribution platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, or also even softwares like GarageBand, Autotune. You just get the feeling that currently music is at the cusp of this massive transition, and music as we know it will cease to exist very soon, and there'll be a completely new form of music. Would you agree?
Yeah. music as we know it should cease to exist in the way things are going, right? So music, the industry that is there in its way, would probably cease to exist when these forces come into play. But to the listener, right, the things that they gain out of music will still continue to be what they are. So I'll explain what I mean, right? So today, music follows the power law curve, right? Wherein you have, is it the power law? What's the curve? It's the power law curve, right? Wherein 20% of, probably even 2% of all the revenues go to, 2% of the revenue go to 80% of the people. Let's say an AR Rahman.
80% of the revenue go to 2% of the people.
2% of the revenue goes to 80% of the people and the other way around, right?
Wait, what do you mean?
98% of the revenue
Yeah.
goes to 20% of the musicians.
Yeah.
And I did the
That
math
makes-
the other way.
Yeah.
Edit kar dena.
Now we are definitely keeping this.
I'm just an engineer.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean to say is a small portion of the musicians.
Oh, it's a 20-80 rule.
It's not the 80-20, it's 98-2. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not even the 80-20
Oh,
rule.
now in music. Yeah, sure.
Huh.
Okay.
Because a very small percentage of the musicians enjoy the money that comes from a large chunk of the music, because we listen to music that we find popular, right? And that's where the money is going. Going forward, the way that music is produced is going to become more decentralized, I hope, right? Given there is more collaboration, given there is better access to instruments and better access to studios, right? By studios, I mean your computer. That's your studio today, right? So there's better access, which means that the production of music is going to become more decentralized. When that happens, the way we think of music, wherein we attach music to a person, that will get diluted a little more than it is already today.
Because there'll be a lot more musicians out there.
There'll be a lot more music out there without us having to put a label onto it, right? Because we are just going to attach music to the purpose it's solving, right? So therein, the way we consume music will differ. The way that people think about getting into the music industry will differ, right? Wherein I can enter the music industry and have a fair share of that pie depending on the amount of work I put in, right? So that might change. But I don't think the way we listen to music or the way we think, okay, this is music, right? There is a beat and there is a melody. I don't think that will change. Because that is something which is wired into our brains.
So my pop used to crack a joke 15 or 20 years back, which was that people who are good gamers or good computer game players will become good surgeons in the future, because surgery would move away from handheld instruments towards keyboard controller instruments. Do you think the same will happen in music? Do you think...
I'm imagining us when we used to play WWE.
Yeah.
And we used to whack random keys on the controller.
That's not
I'm not going to surgery with this.
The Tekken button smash, right? But have you seen like the good gamers, how their hands they move? Oh man, that's art in its own way. Should get a gamer on soon. Anyway, the point is, do you think music can also move in that direction, where instead of having someone who has a physical finesse in playing the guitar, the mridangam, or the morsing, or violin, instead of that, we will move towards someone who's an expert in the guitar software or the morsing software? And the distinction is that you might need the same theoretical understanding of the instrument. You might need to know how the guitar produces sound and what kind of sounds it can produce, but you don't need that physical ability to do it. You'll be doing it in a guitar software and an application somewhere.
That already exists, right? So what you're talking about with gamers is muscle memory, right? So they know exactly where the keys have to go to perform a certain action without them having to think about what they're doing, which is exactly what happens to a guitar player, right? They know exactly where their fingers have to be. Now, what happens on a guitar software or a drum software is more about processing the sound that comes out of a guitar, right? So the guitarists themselves have to know exactly how to use those softwares, right? With the computer, it's more about getting the mental skill of how music is produced. So music has different frequencies, sound has different frequencies, right? So in music, different instruments have different frequencies. That's what you have your drums for, your bass guitar, your rhythm guitar, your vocals. All of them sit at different bands of the spectrum. Yeah. So for a music producer who uses the computer, right, to make music, they have to be able to discern these things when they're listening to the song in a mix, for example, right? You need to train your ear to be able to say, okay, you know, this is the bass guitar, this is the sound that's being produced, this is how it sounds in conjunction with the other instruments that are there. And if I increase or decrease the volume, this would be the impact, right? That's not all. You run multiple softwares on top of it, wherein you might add like a certain audio filter. You might use a certain audio compressor, right? To be able to envision what would happen if I apply this processing on a track, right? That's a skill in itself, and that's already been there among producers for the last probably 3 or 4 decades, right? And now it's becoming even more prevalent because even people who play the guitar or play the piano or people who play the drums, we also learn how to use production softwares because it's easily accessible and gives us a lot more control about the music we produce. So that skill is definitely there and something we pick up.
Yeah, what I'm driving at is, do you think it will now pour over into actual instruments itself? So maybe in the future, when I'm talking about a band, there won't be one guy with a guitar, one guy with a drum set, and one guy with a mic or something. All five will be sitting with laptops, and they're all doing their own software and it's all merging together. Do you think that's possible?
Possible, yeah. But why would you watch that as a live performance? Unless probably you would, look at their screens and see in real time what's happening.
This is exactly what people do with DJs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you literally go to watch someone on a laptop with a
that's true.
turntable, right? Do you think that will happen? So the Beatles of 2050 might be five guys on five laptops creating different sounds and it's all coming together.
I don't think it would be that because we as humans like to see things which are larger than life, right? My vision of music going forward is that it's going to be more of a team or even maybe an organizational effort, wherein the people who actually make the music will probably not be the ones performing that music, right? You might have like K-pop today, what K-pop is, right? K-pop the performers are more of dancers. They're people who can reproduce the song, right? They're people who can sing it and dance along to it, which is what I envision music being in the longer term, right? Wherein you're producing a show, you're producing the set, you're producing the people who are performing the songs, right? So it's not necessarily going to be people on a laptop. I mean, I'm sure there will be a niche audience for that as well, but the mainstream pop is going to move towards this.
Right. Because I have this vision of DJs being the first prototypes of what musicians of the future will look like. This is the caveman Fred Flintstone version. And then in the future, like you have orchestra conductors and an actual orchestra, you will remove all the elements from that and just be one guy on a laptop controlling an orchestra basically.
Why do you need 5 guys with 5 laptops though?
I would imagine that to be able to master each sound. So what a guitarist does, obviously you still need that knowledge. You're just translating that into more of a virtual environment. So you'll have someone who's doing the guitar software or whatever the musical term for that might be, that tone or that musical tone.
So I don't think it would even be a computer, right? 50 years from now, computers are not going to exist. It's going to be us, right? Like probably a microchip implanted in your head.
Sure.
Right? You think of a tune and that's the tune that's getting produced. Right? And that's exactly where it's going to go. Right? So in that case, still the fundamental knowledge or the fundamental skill that you need to have is to be able to put the right notes together.
Do you think of the exact sound when you're producing it? Like, do you replicate that exactly in your mind?
I obviously have a sound in my head, right? Which is what gets reproduced.
Does it sound exactly like what you think in your mind?
Yeah.
It does?
Yes.
So there's no difference between the physical emergence of that note or that melody and from what you've already heard in your mind?
No, because I might have... So I'm a drummer, right? So I think about the beat, right? Like I tell my bandmates, I'm a groove monkey. I don't understand melody, right? I just understand beats. So in my mind, I would have something like ta 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 ta, and that's what would play out when I play the actual instrument. But it would be the same spacing of the sounds, probably not the exact sound, right? But in my mind, once I start playing the drums, once I'm at the kit, I would exactly know that if I hit this, this is the sound that's going to come, and that's the sound I want to produce because I've gotten accustomed to that environment.
Do you think this not hand-eye coordination, maybe the time it takes for the brain to send a message to your hand is causing a delay in your music? This is what Elon Musk talks about when he's talking about the chip and the neural link, when he says that the biggest problem is the bandwidth or the delay in sending whatever you're thinking to your phone and searching for it, and rather just put it in your mind. Do you think if that happens, music will change in a way? Because currently there's a delayed effect into what you're thinking and then putting it on the drums. Sure, there might be a split second delay, but there is still a delay. Do you think there will be some instantaneous creation of music, or it'll get much faster. It will get a lot more. Are we getting too much into science
I
fiction?
don't know actually. No, I mean it might happen, right? But the thing is, it takes time for the thought to form in your head, right? I feel like if it directly goes from the time the thought, the inception of the thought to the actual performance, if that time is reduced, I feel like there'll be a lot more chaos. But this is again what I envision things being and what I imagine it being. I don't think there's merit in discussing that at length because I'm not formed this idea completely in my head. I'm just like,
But something very interesting you bring up. So I took a one drumming lesson, and it was nearly a disaster. But what I really found was that if you stop to think about what you're doing, you're already too late.
that's
You've
true.
missed the beat,
That's true.
right? The metronome you've already
Yeah.
missed. If you're consciously thinking about where your leg is pressing or what you're hitting, you've already missed it.
Yeah.
So when you are playing, when you're actually on stage or when you're performing, are you thinking or are you completely lost in something that you cannot explain? And in a way, it feels like you're not in control of yourself.
It would be more of the second thing because it's what do you feel when you're batting? You're not really thinking, right? That's exactly the feeling that you have when you're playing the drums, right? Because all of this is muscle memory, right? Your brain doesn't consciously tell your hands to move in a certain way. It's more of a reflex action. So your brain would be giving the larger, idea to your body about, okay, if to go with the cricket analogy, your brain is telling you, okay, play it on the offside, right? Probably play a cover drive. But how your legs move, how your hands move is something your brain doesn't consciously tell you to do. It is something that automatically happens, which is what it is with drumming as well. I might know that, okay, the song is coming towards a close, so I have to do like a big roll and finish it off. But how I execute it is something that I don't realize my body doing, right? Like my hands automatically move in that direction and do the things that they have to do.
You've defined it as muscle memory, a very scientific way of defining it. But a lot of people talk about music as an energy that takes control of them and they forget what they're doing on stage.
It's called
Uh,
flow, right?
The flow state. Yeah. Do you feel you enter a flow state when you play music?
You do, but there is also a scientific explanation to the flow state,
Which is?
which is wherein you're focused on one thing and you don't consciously, you're not consciously telling your limbs or your hands to do those things, right? So when it comes to music, that's what your flow state is. And I think there is a scientific explanation to this energy that you feel.
Yeah, but what people say is that in that moment they don't feel like they are creating the music, but in a way music's flowing through them. Like they become a vessel for some kind of energy, if that's the word, that takes control of them and in a way is channeling through them. Do you ever get that feeling?
I haven't till date, but probably yes. I mean, even today when I look at some of the songs that I've written, right? Before writing that song, I would not have imagined how that song would come about, right? And post facto, you realize, okay, I mean, this sounds pretty cool, and that's what you actually put onto your record, onto your song. So I can understand why people would feel that there is an energy which is just coming through me, right? So yeah, it's very much possible that you can't explain how, like, shit, did I write that? Like,
Okay, so it's time for a thought experiment, a HOTS question, which is inspired by everything you've mentioned so far. So the year is 2070 or 2120. And if I to just ask you to paint a picture of what music will look like, the entire industry will look like in 50 or 100 years, what does it look like to you? What will remain? What won't? What will be popular? Will you have the same kind of jamming sessions? What instruments remain? Would we have concerts? Would we have performers? Everything we've touched upon. Just give me let's say I'm 70 years old and I'm going to go for my first concert now. What is it looking like for me?
I think there is a personalized concert for each person at that point in time, right? Because I feel like the concept of genre is already fading away slightly, and with time it's going to fade away even more, right? And I'm seeing this out of the data points that we have today, wherein a couple of years ago genres were defined by the kind of instruments you were playing. If you were playing electric guitars and drums, you would call it rock. If you were playing let's say a banjo, it might count as country. So it was very defined that these are the things that constitute these genres. But today, because I can literally create sound out of anything, right? I can literally take a sine wave and modify it to give the sounds that I want. The whole idea of a genre is sort of mixing in, each genre mixes into the other, and there are millions of genres out there. right? After a point, you're going to stop keeping track, right? At that point, each person is going to have their individual style of music that they listen to.
That's their genre.
Yeah, it's going to be your genre, right? So maybe you go to a concert, you plug in, right? The only thing that's set is probably the feel of the music and the tempo of the music. But you're listening to a different song than the person next to you. But we are both feeling the same thing because the beat is the same and the feel is the same, right? It's a happy song at 120 beats per minute. So your dancing is matching, your feel is matching. Probably the songs are completely different.
Fascinating. I actually had a question based on this, which was, should I bring it now? No, we'll bring it later. I think it fits in later. But that's something very interesting. So, do you define genres by the instruments that are used while creating the music? So when I talk about rock, are you only defining by people who've used the electric guitar and the drums and the headbanging? Or can you define music without those instruments? Can there be rock without, let's say, electric guitar or drums?
I mean, I've stopped defining genres lately because it's a very, I think it's a very difficult exercise to do, right? Genres exist because you want to tag music to a certain bucket online. Like, let's say you're putting it on YouTube. If I'm looking for rock music, people should be able to find my song. That's the reason you put genres to it. I personally try not to limit myself to a certain genre. So when I make music, I bring in my Carnatic influences. I try and bring in all of the different things that I listen to. There, I try to bring in some Arabic influences as well. So that's how I look at genre, right? As a way to tag something rather than a way to say this is the music I make.
It's a very interesting picture you painted of a personalized genre and a personalized concert experience in the future. You are currently a member of Beyond Borders, which is this band in a long distance relationship. Do you think moving forward that will become more common? Would it not be necessary to have people physically present together? And maybe it might be even more advantages if you're actually doing it virtually because of all the advantages and technology that you have.
I think if you're talking about a band, then there is the whole aspect of being buddies, jamming together, and all of that, which might still have merit going forward, right? Because that there's a social experience to it, right? Wherein you just come together, you jam for a while, you come up with songs, right? But if you think about professionally producing music or becoming a professional musician, I don't think the whole concept of having a band and a set, like these are the 4 people that I'm going to make music with, is going to be something which is very important going forward, right? Because I can find people to make music with online, and I don't really have to say that physical presence is necessary. So in the professional circles, yes, I see that it's going to become a lot more decentralized, as I put it earlier.
Really? So there would be no need to have bands in the future. It'll just become very individual centric because one person will be capable of doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So we are seeing probably in the last few decades of bands.
No, not really.
Not really?
Not really. See, because how do you teach music to someone who's starting out? Right? Even today, you teach them to play the guitar, you teach them to play a certain instrument, right? And once you start learning to play a certain instrument, the progression of you becoming better at that is that, okay, I'm going to get together with people and start making music with them, right? That's where bands come in. And then you're going to go and perform at the stage and all of those things, right? So those things are going to continue to exist. There might be a case wherein kids start learning to just produce music from their laptops. Then that's a whole different conversation wherein it's a completely decentralized world. But we as humans, we want to perform, right? We want to be on stage. We want that spotlight on us. So that is going to happen only when there's a band construct to it.
A lot of musicians talk about getting into music to leave behind something that stays forever and stays beyond them because everyone's going to leave at some point, and this music will be their legacy in that sense. But do you think music really has that everlasting quality, or do you feel it's a lot more seasonal? And I say this because classical music today is listened to probably by a very niche group of people, and those who listen to it consider it a very pure form and a very sublime form, but it's not mainstream anymore. It doesn't have the fame it probably had back in the 1700s or the 1800s, and maybe most of it is now played in restaurants in the background or something of that sort. It's not really music that everyone sits down to enjoy. And when I listen to it as well, I love it. It's very pure, very sublime. It has this very raw quality to it, but I also get the feeling that something's missing, And I can't put my finger to it, but it just feels like it's missing a certain dimension. Maybe it's not just the lyrics, but it just feels like the way we produce songs today, from what you've spoken about, everything that we have explored in digital production, it feels like songs are a lot more packed. They have a lot more beats, melody, or something to it, while classical music was relying just on the instruments back then, so it feels a lot more raw. So do you ever get this feeling that music is seasonal, and maybe the music we're creating now, while we feel like it will last forever, might actually be something people forget in 30 years, might even start spitting on this kind of genre because it might be so basic that what we discover in the future will be far superior?
That always happens, right? How much of Beethoven's symphonies do you listen to today? Right? But the thing is, back when Beethoven wrote a symphony, there were probably hundreds of other people like him, right, who were writing music. It's that aspect of his legacy that stood on, right? In any field, you strive to do the best in that field, and you strive to leave a mark in that field. And when you're saying leave a mark, it means that I create something so valuable, right, that it has value for generations to come. But how long that thing is going to have value is probably 200 years, 300 years, unless you are Isaac Newton and it's going to go on for centuries. It's going to lose value at some point of time, right? But that is what you strive to do. You strive to create something which has value for someone going forward. And that's probably what musicians strive to do as well. But if it loses value, I mean, it is going to become an archaic art form, right? Rock music today is also sort of an archaic art form, right? Because there are so many different genres of rock and metal that have come in. So what the Beatles made when they were at their peak is what people listen to as a reminiscence of those days, right? But today's music is obviously, like, technically and the way it's produced, it's 100 times better than what it was back then, right? Maybe if the Beatles were alive today and if right now they were kicking off their career, they would probably make music that sounds contemporary as well.
Don't tell that to the Beatles fans, right?
Imagine, like Ringo Starr as a DJ, and I don't know, like
Ringo Starr can imagine as a DJ. No hate to Ringo Starr fans, but that's very interesting to think about. The Beatles, a lot of the music, even though I haven't grown up in the 60s and the 70s, it does have that connection to that decade for me. It's just, this is the 60s, it's the 70s, and the music sounds that way. Okay, so let's start. Let's play a game segment.
Are you going to do rapid fire?
Your answers don't have to be rapid or full of fire. So since you're playing a game segment, you want to give me a drum roll?
Was that good?
Damn, it's almost like you're a drummer, right? Okay, so this is a game segment I like to call Crazy Ideas. So I'm just going to bounce off.
Weren't we just talking crazy ideas all this while?
We were, but now I'm putting a game segment to it.
Okay.
So
putting a label on it.
Yeah, putting a label on it, putting a tag onto it. So I'm just going to run off some ideas of what I think music might look like in the future, and you can let me know whether it's possible or it's not possible. Okay? So this is mainly inspired by...
You're going to do most of the talking.
I mean, I'm going to set the premise, but I would love to hear your opinion on it. So this is inspired by the story I read of the song Another One Bites the Dust by Queen, in which apparently there's a secret message. If you play the song backwards and the part where it says, Another One Bites the Dust, it sounds like marijuana. And apparently they have left clues in the song where, with the way they build the crescendo or the decay or the attack, that you need to play it backwards to get that message in. So apparently Queen had done this intentionally. So my first question for you is, do you think songs in the future will not need to have a linear playback? They don't need to have a start and a finish? Can we also be able to play them backwards then?
Probably.
Would you be interested in creating something like that?
If the music player in which that we're listening to enables us to do that, probably. I guess. I don't know.
Another follow-up question from that would be, do you think songs don't even need to have endpoints? Can songs be cyclical and then you tune in and you tune out whenever you want, but the song keeps going on?
Yeah, there are songs like that. Yeah, I think that it can be a thing.
There are songs?
When you're talking about functional music, right? Yeah, if you go online, you will find 3 hours of jazz music.
Yeah, sure. Right? Or those lo-fi playlists that people just tune into. More like that's more of a radio form, right? Or it's just a certain beat that's playing on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that only exists. That's not as much of a crazy idea. That's quite unfortunate. Do you think we can have multiple... This is another crazy idea. Do you think we can have multiple dimensions in music? So let's say a song will sound a certain way if you play it normally, then if you play it slowly, it's a different song. Play it fast, change the pitch, put a certain filter, sounds different. Can musicians create 5D, 6D songs that will all be part of one big story, but you have to play it differently to then hear it?
I think there can be music that has more interaction from the audience. If I think that's what you're getting at, right? Like, where if you're allowing the audience to do certain things that will make the music sound different. Yeah, definitely. I think that would be a thing.
Do you think we can have like the 5D, 6D cinema kind of concept in concerts as well? Maybe you have some device that vibrates along with the music, or you feel a certain effect, or you get a certain fragrance that all adds to the tone. Do you think that's
Yeah, I think live concerts will get. I think I'm going to say yes to most of these questions because I also think very, like I'm looking forward to what technology can do. So yeah,
You know to just say yes, okay? If you don't like it, you can say no. Oh, okay, let's test it. Let me start asking the most crazy side. Do you think a dinosaur can perform? Okay. So there was one question which I didn't take at that point, which was about the personalization. And I said we will come to it, which is, do you think the Bandersnatch model that Netflix had adopted, would that work in music? Which is songs will adapt on the spot depending on your mood. So I'm listening to something and then it gauges my mood and the song will slow down or be more upbeat version. Currently you have songs which have a sad version, happy version, instrumental version. Do you think that will happen dynamically on the spot?
Would you want it to happen dynamically on the spot? I don't know. It depends on how we feel it, right? Let's say I'm feeling sad and I want to listen to a upbeat music, right? Like peppy song. I put on the peppy song, the song realizes I'm sad and switches to a sad song.
So that's a good point. And what I feel is, let's say when I'm in the mood for a certain kind of music, I will only play those kind of songs. And then the other songs, those are not played at all, right? But in this case, what would happen is a song will adapt to you rather than. So if I'm in a sad mood and want to listen to happy, I want to get happy, I will play happy music. But in this case, I'm just listening to any song and the song itself changes according to my mood.
I think that's possible. I mean, the only thing is you would need your neural inputs to the device that you're listening from. So I don't see why that's not possible.
You're the one saying you got chips in a head, right?
Yeah. So
I've also got a vaccine, so I've got 5G.
Probably music would not even be oral in that case, right? It wouldn't be something that is listened to if you have chips in your brain.
Is that music for you?
I don't know. I've never felt something stimulate my brain directly, right? So
let's say you play a song in your head. Is that music, or does it need to have the physical expression to be music?
When you're playing a song in your head, it's not music, right? Music is defined as audio. It needs to like stimulate your ear. So if it's playing in my head, probably it's a thought.
That's not music.
Is it?
Okay, you touched a lot upon Carnatic music. I just want to get your quick summary on what is Carnatic music. How does it differ from other forms of music?
So Carnatic music is, I would say in a nutshell, it's a performed art form, right? So it is about how the performers perform with each other on stage, right? So each rendition of a song could be completely different from the rendition that the same performer did in the previous concert, right? So it's a lot about how the different musicians on stage interact with each other and perform the music, right? And they have a certain like set of laid down rules, which is the ragas, right? Based on which they know how the next note or the previous note should be, as opposed to like rock music, wherein the song is pre-rehearsed, right? Like all of them know their parts. They know this is what I have to do at this instance. There is not so much of room for variation, right? More often than not, even the solos are exactly reproduced in rock concerts, right? Whereas in Carnatic music, the solos would be completely different every time that they perform. And it's possible that the artists themselves don't know exactly what they're going to perform when they're on stage. Like you said, the whole flow state, right? Yeah. So within the construct of the raga, within the construct of the beat, they will go on performing the solos. So that's what is the primary difference, I would say, between Carnatic music and any other form of music. And Carnatic music also has a very, it's a very structured, laid down, it's got a very solid structure in terms of how it is learned, how the songs are performed, how the songs are written, right? As opposed to I think that's a function of it being a long-standing art form, right? It's been passed on generation to generation. So I think that's the reason it has that heavy structure to it.
How different or how similar is it to jazz?
I'm not an expert in jazz, but I think in terms of it being a like a live art form, a performed art form, they're very similar, right? Where the whole all the things that I spoke about, that each performance would be different. It has a certain set of rules within which the performers perform. They wouldn't probably know exactly what they're going to do before they do it. So those things are very similar.
Is that a scary place to be in? To go on stage and not know what you're going to do? Might be bad.
No, not really.
Anything you do might be good because you're working on a foundation.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you're working on a foundation, and you know that these are the notes that fit within the scale, right? So a common thing that people say is you take a piano and play the white keys. Played any combination, it's going to sound good, right? Because that's the major scale, right? That's the C major scale, and you play any order of those notes, it's going to sound like a tune, right? So once you've defined that these are the notes you can play, right, and you've defined that okay, you can play it from this time period to this time period, and all the other musicians will support that, then whatever you play is going to sound good. So then it's a question of how much skill am I going to show within that frame of time.
What do you think of the role of AI in this? So usually when it comes to music, that's a live art form, an improvised art form. It seems every time you sit together, you will create something unique, but an AI could do it faster and it can do 1 million renditions of unique songs.
Definitely, but the thing is, people come for jazz concerts and Carnatic concerts to watch the performers, right? When that's the case, I don't see how an AI would be helpful.
Yeah, this is something we touched upon where the performer and the human being doing creating the music is what's more important than the AI, because in the future you can just feed a database of songs to an AI system. It can come up with a hit rock number, pop number,
Definitely, yeah.
but you will not be interested in that.
Probably not, yeah. And the question again, right? So there have been instances through history wherein people have come up with algorithms to identify rock songs, right? But the thing is, what makes sorry, not a rock song, algorithms to identify hit songs, right? But what makes a song a hit is that it's been played multiple times to a person, so much so that the person starts liking the song. That's what makes a song a hit song, right? You could make the perfect song by whatever definition you have for a hit song, but if you're not able to get it out on radio, if you're not able to put it out on the channels for marketing in the right amount of time, it's not going to hit the charts. It's not going to hit the top 100 or the top 500 on the Billboard chart. The reason you start liking a song is because it's been played to you repeatedly and your mind has registered that song.
Really?
Yeah.
Has there never been a song where you heard the first time and you were like, damn, that's a great song?
That has been there, but I'm talking about hit songs, wherein a large part of the population likes. That's what a hit song is, right? Wherein it's become famous, it's being played over and over by a large set of the population, right? And that happens when a song is played to you multiple times.
You're saying because it's being played multiple times,
Exactly.
you like it, not because the song is great.
No, because there is a there is a certain feeling that you get when you're able to predict the next thing that's going to come in a song, right? And there is a certain happiness that your brain gets when you're able to predict it. And that's the reason a song which is a pop song, when you listen to it for the first time, you might think it's nothing great, but it makes it an earworm, right? It just keeps playing in your head over and over again. Sure. And then you want to listen to that song again. That's what happens.
Fascinating stuff. As always, Mr. Adi Chan. All right. So before we start wrapping up, I'd love for you to interpret what you've built with the Lego. You've got a great structure in front of you.
I've built a ship.
A ship. Yeah. And it does look like a ship. Unfortunately for me, my shit looks like nothing. In fact, where's the main thing I was building? Clearly dropped it somewhere. Nothing substantial left of it, but I like the ship that you've built. Almost like you're building creative production. Wonderful metaphors and symbolism in this episode, as always. Okay, so let's move on to final questions. What are some books, movies, or people that have strongly influenced in your life?
I really loved reading this book. Recently, I've been reading this book called The Song Machine, which is where a lot of my talking has come from, which talks about how the entire industry makes pop music and how they market it. So that's influenced me quite a bit, wherein I've understood how the industry works and want to emulate that. But on a completely different note, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel is something which really, really influenced me when I read it. Probably because that's one of the first few business books I read. That could also be the reason. But a lot of things from that are things I try to sort of emulate even in my life. So like one of the things he talks about is what your co-workers should be in life, right? you shouldn't think of your work and life as two different things. If you can look at your co-workers as people you can be with throughout the day, that would be a good place for you to have your job at. And that's what a lot of musicians do, right? So like they enjoy each other's presence even for a longer prolonged period of time. I'm sure they also hate each other after a point, but that is something. And these are things which co-apply to the creative side of the world and also to the business side. So that I think is something which I really enjoyed reading.
Who are some of the greatest musicians according to you?
Me.
Yeah, of course. Apart from you, who are some of the greatest?
So in terms of musicians, I really enjoy watching Troy Wright drumming. I also really love this drummer called Matt Garska. He plays for this band called Animals as Leaders, which is very, very, very technical music, but brilliant execution of the songs, right? More often than not, you would see drummers who are spot on their recorded music, but live they might, like slow down the songs or, might not do the sort of embellishments they do on the record, right? But this guy, his performance is better live than you would hear it on the record. So like, constantly challenging himself and becoming better. So I really like that about him. Yeah. I really like Bruno Mars also for some reason.
For some
as
reason.
As a performer, he brings it.
So no one from no historical figure, huh?
No, not really. I used to be a huge Metallica fan when I was in college, but I think all of us go through that phase.
Today's youngsters, man, no respect for the legends. Yeah, all of us go through Metallica and Linkin Park. You have to have gone through that phase if you were in school. Okay, what are some genres? Well, you haven't. I was going to ask a question that remember you think genres are not going to exist, but what's a certain kind of fusion that you would like to see or would like to do?
A fusion?
Yeah.
I think there's like every kind of fusion that had to happen is like there's a lot of fusion that's already happening, right? If I have to think about a good collab,
Carnatic music and metal,
that's already there.
Damn.
I'm telling you, just pick any two genres.
It's there.
Put it together on YouTube, you will find a song.
Ouch.
Carnatic death metal, I'm sure that also exists. So I can't really think of something that I would really, really want a fusion of.
What are some of the greatest songs according to you?
Greatest songs. Metallica's Nothing Else Matters.
Ooh.
Why can't I remember the name of the song? Beatles. Which is the most famous Beatles song that you know?
Jude?
Yeah, Hey Jude.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I was just thinking na 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 na.
Yeah, John Lennon's rolling in his grave.
Yeah. Maybe like, just take that away.
Yeah, he should. I think he should.
But yeah, I think these two are ones that come to mind directly.
Are these songs?
Smoke on the Water, man. I think Smoke on the Water is one of the greatest songs because of how simple it is. Anyone who picks up the guitar, it's the first song they play.
Is that why it's one of the greatest?
Yeah, because so a song becomes greater the more people can relate to it, right? And because it's such a simple song, I think people just pick up the guitar and that's the first thing they play. And because of that, that tune is just like, it's there in everyone's mind. And also it has a great story behind it.
Which I'm not sure a lot of people might know.
That a lot of people might not know, but it's like a very nice story.
So do you think, this is a question that I didn't have, but so you mentioned most songs become hit because they played repeatedly. Do you think songs like Hey Jude or Nothing Else Matters, do you think they became hit because they were played repeatedly? Or the songs were that good that they could have become hit regardless?
No, I think it also had a factor of being played repeatedly. The Beatles, for one, used to play live very, very often, right? And the reason they got to play live very often was because they had the experience. Before that, they used to play at bars for quite some time as a band, right? And because of that, they got the chance to play live very often. And the more often that you play live, you're obviously cementing the songs in your audience's minds. So anything, right? Any song which has made it big, I would say has that factor of being played repeatedly, having multiple live shows, right? So I think that's going to be there.
Final two questions. What would you like your legacy to be like?
Wow, heavy questions for the end. Definitely something to do with music. Probably something to do with technology as well, the way things are going. But yeah, those two things.
Perfect person to have on the show to talk about technology and music, Mr. Adi Chan. Last question for you. What do you think is the meaning of life?
Meaning of life is to be able to get through in the happiest way possible.
It's a great meaning to have. Thank you, Adi Chan. If people want to find you, connect with you, listen to your music, or listen to Beyond Borders music, where can they do so?
Instagram. And hopefully on TikTok soon.
Yeah.
And YouTube.
Would you want to tell us your username? Maybe that might be advisable.
So please find me on Music Beyond Borders on Instagram. And probably that will lead you to our YouTube channel as well. So please listen to us.
Please do. Thank you, Adi Chan. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Shalaj.